Von Galt. How you doing? Welcome to Nature of Reality Radio. Great to be speaking to you. It was the Spiritual Awakening, or is it Spirituality Awakening YouTube channel? Whoever, the lady who runs that channel, I'm dreadful with names. I remember a lot, but I'm dreadful with names. Very pretty lady
Is
who
it
runs that
Nikki
channel.
Sutton?
Nikki Sutton, I believe that is her name. Yes, Nikki
Yes,
Sutton.
I love
Okay,
Nikki.
thank you.
She's
Yes,
wonderful.
and for her to be, for the creator to have chosen her to have the Spirituality Awakening YouTube channel with a check mark next to that to say this is the Spirituality Awakening YouTube channel. Well, she must be very significant to have the creator chosen her to be the one who gets a YouTube channel by that name, and it must have been, you must be very, very significant to have been chosen by her to be a guest on. She doesn't really do radio that much, but when she does, it's worth it. And that was definitely a very interesting thing to listen to. So I need to give a quick disclaimer to my listeners too. And folks, I can't help but make a big stink about this. I have been very disappointed about the fact that nobody seems interested in subscribing to my Patreon account to be able to listen to my interviews right after I do them. I started after Christmas. Doing a Patreon where in which all my interviews I wait 2 to 3 weeks after I do them to upload them publicly for everybody. I do upload them after I do them, but they're not fully public for the whole world until 2 to 3 weeks after. I've tried to make some money off Patreon, and apparently people are so hard script with making money in this present day and age that they've decided to be patient and actually wait those 2 to 3 weeks, which means no money for me through Patreon. So I can't hold anything against people for doing that, but it's nonetheless disappointing that I can't monetize my show that way because people are willing to wait the 2 to 3 weeks rather than subscribe. So, I mean, folks, I really, really do not want to have this show come to a point where I'm only going to do like 50 to 75% of the interview for everybody, and then I'm going to force people to have to listen to 25% of the interviews only accessible through Patreon subscription. I really don't want to do that, folks. So if it'd be nice if maybe you could pay me a little money on Patreon with some Patreon subscriptions and show me that you care about my show enough to not have to force me to make like 25% of these shows not accessible unless you pay me. I don't want to do that, but hey, at the same time, it's time for people to monetize their shows, and well, just need to get that out of the way. Also, all my interviews are uploaded in addition to YouTube on Cost.tv, which is a blockchain channel. The more people that watch my shows on that channel, on that website, the more money I can make through blockchain cryptocurrency. So after I upload to YouTube, I will also upload to Cost.tv with the link to the Cost.tv video in the YouTube description. There's always going to be a little delay, of course, because it takes a couple hours to upload to Cost.tv. So if the video is not on Cost.tv, just listen to the YouTube video, but if you see that there's a link in the description on the YouTube video for the Cost.tv version of the same video, only listen to the YouTube video for 15 seconds, folks, for the sake of giving me a view credit, and then please go to watch the rest of the interview on Cost.tv so I can get some blockchain cryptocurrency money from you listening. Cost.tv only allows for 1 hour uploads, though, so I often have to divide my shows into two parts when I upload there, so I just want to get that out. And well, it's great to be speaking to you on a 222 Super 2 Power 2 day. I don't know exactly how much numerology and Buddhism go hand in hand, but I have no reason to
We
believe
follow
that.
Vedic. We follow Vedic.
Okay, well, they would maybe you can explain what the Vedics would think about a day like today, where there's a lot of twos involved, and it actually says two, among other things, is good for making acquaintance with someone. So it's great to make acquaintance with you on this show, and I'm going to give you the chance now to, before we get into the metaphysics and the science and the how Buddhism works from a fifth dimensional standpoint. Some might say that's an oxymoron, but then again, according to Andrew Bartz, the Akashic Records reader, all the religions, well, they're all wrong, but Buddhism is the most accurate religion when it comes to metaphysics and spirituality. And then he said, but then the Buddhists got it wrong anyway, so, well, okay, well, maybe you can prove him wrong to some extent to say that following Buddhism spirituality is actually beneficial. I'm sure it is. All religions do teach good things, even though they do suppress our consciousness at some level, but not including New Age movement. Buddhism is the best when it comes to metaphysical science, so maybe we'll get into that. But before we get into that and all the other questions, I'd like you to introduce yourself, who you are, what you experience from a primary source standpoint for all the listeners that have never heard about you. You can take as long as you need to discuss your life story from a primary source perspective. You got the floor. I don't have Alex Jones-itis. I will not interrupt you. I will put myself on mute and shut up. So you have all the time you need to tell this on this and all the questions we do. So you got the floor. Your life story, Von Galt, please.
Sorry. Oh, woo! Breathe, breathe,
Yes, I'm a
Andrew.
fast talker. I know. I do. I've been accused of talking too fast sometimes,
I
and
think you had another lifetime where you were one of those auctioneers, like, come on, come on, come on, 500, 500,
Andrew
600.
Bartzis never told me that when I had him do a session to access my past lives, although I've discovered I can't talk so fast if I have a guest like Eric von Daniken, the ancient astronaut theory guy who never learned English in any school. So and I also learned from my late grandfather who grew up in Poland and didn't learn English till age 40. If you talk fast in the English language, people that have never learned English in any school will have great difficulty understanding you. And Eric von Daniken himself, a couple times in the interview, was like, "Could you please stop talking?" Because he couldn't stand my fast talking, and I can't blame him. But you seem to be able to understand it.
That's
And
okay. That's okay. My parents are Laotian, and English is not a first language. So my second language, aside from English, is broken English. So I go into Chinatown around the country, and I speak my wonderful broken English because you take away some of the pronouns and some of the connection words just to get the basic point, and they understand you. So it's a talent. It is a talent. So, but I totally understand that. So, anyways, so for those who are not familiar with my work, I am Von Galt, a normal working mom here in the Seattle area. Work in IT, have two children, wonderful husband, and basically what kind of threw me into talking about Buddhism in the fifth dimension and metaphysics and consciousness is that obviously I was raised Buddhist growing up, going to a lot of different monasteries and Buddhist temples around the country, in Laos, in the Seattle area with my family. So I'm very familiar with metaphysics, consciousness, our Merkabahs, etc. But for me, just like many other traditions out there, it was just a set of principles, and I didn't think anything of it. Well, growing up, a lot of the monks would, especially the senior monks, would, in the middle of the meditation, as soon as my family would walk in, they would stop and they would let the student monks continue on the meditation or the chant, whatever they were doing at the time. And he would look around trying to find a senior person coming in because he or she would say, "Oh, a teacher has walked in the room. Find that person." And typically, we would just kind of sit down, and I'm a little girl, and we just carry on. And like all little girls, I kind of ran around and played with my friends. Didn't think much of it until I became a teenager, and then um, the monks would be like, just isolate me. They finally figured it out. They started isolating people that would come in at different sessions, and they finally figured out that it was me that was throwing off their meditation. And when one of them actually stopped and said, "Do you have something to teach us? You came here with some knowledge." And I said, "I had nothing to teach you. I'm just a little girl and I wanted to play." So that was pretty much the extent of my childhood of growing up in these different monasteries and learning. But one of the things that I did differently was I was very bored of the basic one, two, threes, which is most traditions, even in Buddhism, that just teach the basics, which is how not to be a douchebag and have to spend the rest of your life trying to undo the things that you create that are havoc in your life. So I got that basic. That's a common understanding. So I went beyond that and started to study the murals and the art history, cracked open the books that nobody ever reads in the back. I was really interested in the art history of Buddhist mandalas. And a lot of the art history has been going around as long as um, past Buddhism into Hinduism, which is 7,000 or more years old. And they often had the Buddhist mandalas image, which is in my book, Buddhist Mandalas, it's the front cover. So, anyways, fast forward to college, um, the Dalai Lama and many different prominent monks and nuns growing up that I would follow started an initiative to work with academia to participate in academia and kind of study the effects of mindfulness, meditation, consciousness, simple things. I didn't think anything profound of it. And over the course of following that work, in 20 years of following that work, what came through was a lot of scientific information in many, many dry medical journals, computer journals, and various industry journals about how consciousness changes our reality and how our reality is an aspect of how we see ourselves and how we see the world. Physical reality actually changes. So you shift between different realities. So a lot of the metaphysical stuff that I knew growing up that seemed a little bit sci-fi now has science to back it up. And that 20 years of research is what I put in my Buddhist Mandalas book series. And I have book 1, which is Buddhist Mandalas, Explore Parallel Realities with Sacred Geometry. And I was supposed to be done, but the teachers keep on adding things to book 2. So hopefully in the next month, I'll finally finish proofreading book 2, and I will publish Buddhist Mandalas, Christ Consciousness of a Multidimensional Merkabah. And then at some point, I'll finally finish the Trinity series of Buddhist Mandalas and do book 3. So after 20 years of research, and I still do that stuff, after 20 years of research into finding out that a lot of this stuff is actually real. It's not really sci-fi and fantastical. It's actually real stuff. And we have the science to prove it, and we continue to prove it more and more and clarify certain things that kind of has holes in the canon, because we want to clarify some concepts that are kind of hard to understand from different schools of Buddhism. And we have gaps in our canon and in our teachings that we wanted to fill in as well. And so a lot of that that collaboration with academia really helped fill in those different areas that we were curious about. And we continue to still do that participation today. So after 20 years, or after my lifetime of studying Buddhist studies, and then following the research with that collaboration, I finally have the material to tell the monks growing up that, yes, I do have information about the Dharma that I can teach you finally. And you can just read the books. There you go.
Thank you, and for getting into your life story there, and covered a couple of things there in your the first 2 questions anyway on those list of suggested questions regarding the book, and also but okay, let's talk about now what I said, that controversial statement I made when I first started this show, saying that Akashic Records reader Andrew Bartzis, who is my #1 source of information on this show, without question, by the way, he did say that out of all the religions, not counting the New Age movement, if that can be considered a religion, he said that out of all the religions, Buddhism is the one that is the most metaphysically accurate in terms of spiritual science and whatnot. But then he said, but in the end, the Buddhists got it wrong. I'm kind of drawing a blank on what they got wrong that he said. I think it may have something to do with the fact that it fails to acknowledge the fact that you and everything else in the cosmos is infinite consciousness. Doesn't acknowledge the fact that you are infinite. I don't know if there's anything else you can think
Actually,
of.
it does.
It does?
It
Okay.
does.
Well, then maybe it was something else.
It does.
Do you know what the thing that
So,
Buddhists got wrong that he's talking about?
So I don't know. I don't know the person that you're talking about, but I will explain. And this goes into the advanced studies of Buddhism because, like I said, most people follow the basics because they can't get beyond the basics of not screwing over their lives and being a douchebag to each other. But if you get past those basics, you can go into the advanced stuff. And the advanced stuff is about everyone within samsara. Samsara is a Sanskrit word for creation. Everyone within creation, you, Andrew, myself, the president, the Dalai Lama, the trees, the air, the dirt, everything in creation, the good guys, the bad guys, they are all connected to each other, and they're connected to source. They're all fractal expression of source consciousness inside them, experiencing their creation as their creation. There's only one person here, and we're all fractal expressions of source energy, looking at creation from different vantage points.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. And regarding how popular Buddhism is in the around the world, it's the Eastern world is known for Buddhism more so than the Western world. A couple of countries in question, I believe that Pakistan is one of the highest percentage of Buddhists among percent of the Buddhists relative to the rest of the population. And Japan has a lot of Buddhists. And when it comes to China, a whole new can of worms there. One of the more memorable political cartoons that I've memorable for the wrong reasons that I've ever seen in my life was I think it was like in the year 1999 or 2000. I saw the political cartoon where a monk, I don't remember if it was a Christian monk or a Buddhist monk, was trying to do a ceremony somewhere in China, but he was interrupted by a Chinese police officer who pointed a gun at him, and the Chinese police officer said, "Well, of course we have freedom of religion in China. You are free to worship Mao or else you go to prison." So not a very pleasant thing, I'm sure, for a lot of people that want to practice any religion in China. But that would, you think, go double for Buddhism because of what goes on in the Tibet area. So in regards to geography and like the world, um, why are the countries that focus on Buddhism? Why are they Buddhist, and what do you see for the future of Buddhism?
Buddhism is not a religion. Let's get that straight.
Okay.
It's not a religion. Buddhism is was founded by Siddhartha Buddha. Siddhartha Gautama. He was the first Buddha. He was an Aryan prince from a Hindu family, and he went beyond the philosophy of Hinduism, had his awakening ascension through hypnotic meditation, saw his 1,000 different lives, and realized that we're all connected. And you guys can all read this in the Jakarta Tales. He saw that we're all connected, and he had his life review of his 1,000 different lives from all different vantage points, as the good guy, as the bad guy, as the woman, as the man, as the rock, as the animals, etc., etc., etc. And he realized that this was a game for the consciousness, that the sojourn in which souls choose to incarnate into various incarnations, whether it's on Earth, in different planets, in different dimensions, in different solar systems, they're choosing it for their own spiritual evolution and for their own interests. Sometimes it's fun as well, just to have different incarnations. So he saw all of that, and he saw the different roles that we play with each other, so that we can have our hero's journey, so we can have our falls and get ourselves back up, so we can have our pitfalls and our triumphs. So that's the first Buddha. And because of that, he came up with the Four Noble Truths, which is the first and basic foundations for how the philosophy started out with. And the Four Noble Truth is not religious at all. The first Four Noble Truth is that life is suffering. The second one is that attachment causes suffering. The third one, insights remove suffering. And the fourth one, living the Eightfold Path ends suffering. And the Eightfold Path that ends suffering, if you want to do the worksheet to get over your abundance blocks and the issues that hold down your frequency and upset you about life and your incarnation, and if you want to raise your frequency to a higher dimension of awareness, the book Buddhist Guide to Manifest Parallel Realities that I wrote, which is using the Four Noble Truths and Eightfold Path in the Age of Consciousness, has a worksheet in there, and that whole book goes over how you can dissect your abundance blocks, remove those dense issues, and raise your frequency. And so the Eightfold Path is correct thought, speech, action, livelihood, understanding, effort, concentration, and mindfulness. There's nothing religious about that. That's why no one's going to excommunicate you. No one's going to inaugurate you. No one's going to baptize you. It's just a set of principles to use to raise your frequency so you can get to higher levels of awareness within the matrix. And it's up to you to decide how you want to create your reality, because reality is the creation of your own consciousness. And if you do that, you will start having your own personal Mandela effects. So it's something to be experienced.
Right.
Once you experience it, then You know, it's like love. You can study it, but until you fall in love, you do not know.
I'm trying to
So
find
there's
my.
nothing to convince anybody. There's nothing to convince anybody about.
Okay, fair enough. I'm trying to find my dream girl myself, so I'm trying to find love. But the
You will
countries.
attract what
Oh,
you are.
yes. I think I need to work on a few things, inner wise. But I wanted to know about the geography, like which countries are the ones. Maybe I missed a few. I mentioned China with Tibet, Japan, Pakistan. Any other countries that I failed to mention? Why are those? Give us a geography lesson and a history lesson here. Why are the countries that um, have Buddhism as a popular religion? Why are they the case, and what do you see for the future of the religion around the world?
Okay, like I said, it's not a religion, it's a
Okay, I'm
tradition.
sorry. I got to get into
All
the
right.
habit of that.
All right.
Okay.
Spiritual tradition. Spiritual a religion will have a set of things that you must believe in order to be accepted. And there's a whole principle to it. So anyways, it's just a philosophy. So it it started off in Nepal, in India, around the Himalayas, and it just grew and spread out throughout Asia. Most of Asia is Buddhist, and it's easy to kind of accept Buddhism because Buddhism has a very universal approach to the way that we see the Dharma. The way that we see the wheel of Dharma is your life cycle. The way that we see samsara. So, and it works really well with Taoism and a lot of Eastern traditions as well. And one of the things that is happening in China is that they really don't want people to learn the advanced studies because they're afraid of how powerful the people would become because they can change their reality.
Yes, and China is all use the
It,
communists to come down hard on you. So since
but it doesn't. But the thing is that there are different versions of reality and there are different versions of people. So the versions that are very fearful um, are they're just going to have a harder and harder time because as more people become into their own awakening that they are someone who realize that they exist in a holographic reality that is responding to the commands of themselves. It results in consciously creating both individually and collectively their reality. So they're afraid of losing the control, but it's an uphill battle against source. People will go through their leveling up their energy field.
yes, and I have tried to use Buddha myself to enhance my energy field around my property from a feng shui standpoint. The Jade Buddha was a thing that I read in some feng shui guide to help generate wealth and abundance. I have a Jade Buddha little statue that I put underneath a red jasper tree that I also read somewhere is a good feng shui tool. Put it on my bedroom mirror, and I also have another Buddha figurine made of a small 1 inch wide, 1 inch long Buddha figurine made of sterling silver that I put on my altar. Do you know, from a feng shui standpoint anyway, what having Buddha figurines around you can do? The jade one, they said the jade one's really good for wealth, but I think sterling silver, the one, would also be good for wealth because silver is good for generating wealth and abundance to some degree, metaphysically speaking. Do you agree or disagree?
So the different statues and the different Buddhas that people use decoration in feng shui, those are like they act like permission slips. Like they're your way of saying, okay, I'm allowing myself to be metaphysical. I'm putting it out there to the universe that I want this. Now, if you really want actual change in your life, you're going to need to do the work on yourself. because it is through yourself when you address your dense issues that bring down your energy field, address the way that you see other people, the way you see yourself, address your abundance blocks, and you learn and you grow from that, then you're going to be creating in the higher energies and within your own consciousness faster, easier ways to create your next best experience more positively. So all those other things are just like a hall pass for you. But you still got to walk through the hall and make those decisions. You don't even need that at that point.
Yes, I'm sure that X amount of years down the line, I can sell
You could do it now.
or yeah, or donate my figurines and my crystals and everything to people who could need them more. But well, what's wrong with keeping them around as a tool for a little while? And I
There's
happen to
nothing
like.
wrong with them. I have plenty. They're beautiful. They're beautiful decorations, but you don't need them. They're not the reason why you're going to thrive in your life.
Well, I've read one of my
You're the
horoscopes said,
reason why you're going to
but
thrive in your life.
yeah, and when I reach age 40, according to my horoscope, that's when I'm going to want to give a lot. Maybe then I'll find myself giving, or maybe if we're done with money by that point, that'll be a miracle if this planet is done with money by the time I'm 40. I'm 34 now, but yeah, that I could give them all away to people who need them. But wishful thinking, I'm sure, to some degree. But anyhow, let's get to some of your questions. Second part of the second question here. What happened to Earth post 2012? I'm sure you have a reason for putting this in. My understanding, two things that stand out of all the what happened on December 21st, 2012. Um, Two things stand out that Akashic Records reader Andrew Bartzis, he said that that was the first time in the history of humanity where everybody got to experience universal dream time, when we all basically got to temporarily have our spirit bodies go to the highest realms, nearest source, for lack of a better description, and decide whether we want to be sheeple or whether we want to move on with a high spiritual awakening for the better. And he says that we're having the same experience happen every eclipse, um, total eclipse, solar, lunar, and also every equinox and solstice. And also, the second thing was when I had Jim Self on my show, he talked about this, how the Archangel Metatron basically came in on December 21st, 2012. And he did point out that the dates 11, 11, 11, and 12, 12, 12 were part of the trifecta of dates. The third one that completes the trifecta was December 21st, 2012. And on that date, Metatron came in and said, okay, from now on, everything is in the fourth dimension. I mean, it may still seem that it's in the third dimension because we're so accustomed to it. That's what he said. Just like when you close one eye, you're only seeing in two dimensions. Unlike when you have two eyes open, you're seeing in three. It looks the same, but that's only because you have a mental image already prepared for you. So it looks like two dimensions and three dimensions with one or both your eyes open kind of looks the same, regardless of the number of dimensions. He says that even though it appears like we're still in the third dimension from December 21st, 2012 onward, we have strictly been in the fourth dimension. But then that opens up the whole new can of worms of what happened this past winter solstice, when a lot of people were talking about how this past winter solstice was very significant in terms of fifth dimensional awakenings. So I'm babbling a little too much here. Why don't you get into what this the post 2012 stuff from your knowledge and standpoint, and maybe you can get into what this past winter eclipse was, winter solstice was really all about, because it seems so significant relative to all the other ones.
Right. So in Buddhism, we don't really get into prophecies. We have our folklores, and we have our folklores just like many other traditions, but they're just probabilities. They're not gospel. They're not fact. There's probabilities. If they happen, they happen. Wonderful. If they don't happen, then you know whenever they do, they will. So I don't really get into predictions or prophecies, but 2012 in Buddhist era calendar is 2555 because we start the calendar from the year that Gautama Buddha had come into the scene. And so it's 2555, which if you're into ancient numbers, like you said earlier, with 222, 555 is a number of changeover, of changes. And so basically, 2012 is actually not a prophecy, it's a legitimate science. 2012 is the year, it takes the Earth 25,920 years to complete a processional cycle. So it's an actual thing. It wasn't doomsday like Hollywood and some people in the West perceive it to be. Buddhists just saw it as, oh, it's the end of the earth cycle and the end of polarity and the beginning of unity consciousness, which is a fifth dimensional consciousness to earth. And basically, what we did is we just acknowledged that crossover with awakening ceremonies worldwide. So the Mayan chiefs did it, and we really got a lot of attention for that one. Native American chiefs, Easter Island chiefs, Buddhists, and some other um, indigenous tribes as well who kept that knowledge in there. And that's what 2012 was. Now, we didn't know what was going to happen after 2012. It hasn't been done yet. We don't know what this looks like when the earth changes to a higher energy. But after going over 20 years of research with Princeton University and their random number generators, when they started doing research into the indigenous beliefs that Earth is alive and that we're all connected to Earth. And if she's going to go to the fifth dimensional awareness, then we would like to go there as well. So they were just kind of curious, and so they got some funding from some curious people, and they started that research. And after 20 years of reading all that research, time in again and again and again, all these random number generators prove the science correct. The Earth is alive, and we are all connected, and she is going to a higher energy and bringing higher energies into the Earth. And basically, how we know this is that much like animals in nature, when the energy changes, like a tsunami is going to come or an earthquake's going to come, the energy changes, and all the animals in the wild almost instinctively start running for the hills at the same time because animals are really tuned into the earth's energy. Well, humans act much like animals, but we're really stupid. So we don't pay attention to those subtle cues and the changes in energy. Our ego gets in the way a lot. But what they've found in that research, and you can look over 20 years of scientific data in the website is called newsphere.princeton.edu. Yeah, let me see. Yeah. So it's Noosphere, NOOSPHERE.princeton.edu. So over there, you can actually look at over 20 years of research. And time again, the random number generators worldwide would start going off and recording huge spikes in the Earth's Hertz frequency. And whenever she does that, it's kind of like when they measure earthquakes. Whenever they do that, they found that a natural disaster or some kind of major upheaval or event is happening in that part of the world hours before it happens. And they picked that up with 9/11, they picked it up with Hurricane Katrina, and a lot of other events around the world. So after looking at 20 years of this information, it's pretty clear the Earth is alive and she's connected to all of us, every one of us, and we're all connected to her, whether we recognize it or not. And we all have, because we're connected to each other, our heart energy is very powerful. And when something's going to happen, just like all the animals in the wild, all of the people in that specific area, according to the science, is having almost kind of like a collective unconscious anxiety attack at the same time. And so the Earth's picking up that magnetic that we're sending out as a collective in that specific area. And so it's going to set the numbers going off, like something's going to happen in this area, and that's usually what happens. So we're all connected to each other. We're connected to Earth, and she responds to us. She responds to a lot of things that happen in her body, like tsunamis and earthquakes, but she also responds to human events, but it's still unsure why she responds to some human events and not others. That's still kind of unknown. But we do know that she does respond to human events like bombings and so forth. So that's what happened in 2012. The way that you understand that moving forward is that the other scientific research that they found is that whenever the Earth has a spike in her Schumann resonance, which is like her heart song. Her typical heartbeat is 7.83 hertz, and it's kind of like your heartbeat. It kind of fluctuates, here and there. But whenever she has spikes in her heartbeat, that's when they're thinking, oh, something's going to happen in this specific area, according to all of the research. And before 2012, a lot didn't happen for a very long time. So it was a very boring science experiment. But then after that, it started going to, I think 9/11 went to like 10 or 14 hertz, but that's pretty big considering she didn't do anything for a long time. So it would go to 20, 30, and people thought that was really, really big because she didn't really do a lot of things. After 2012, instead of doing um, 10, 20, she started jumping into higher numbers. She started taking huge leaps in her Schumann resonance, going to like 60, 80, 100, etc. I don't really keep up anymore with it, but she started making these huge leaps. And what they found in science is that when they look at the magnetic spikes of the sun that hit Earth, and they look at times in which she had a spike in her Schumann resonance, what they found is that um, when they look at 82 different countries, they found that during those peak times that the Earth had her spikes in frequency, there will be renaissance and there will also be major wars that's happening in those countries. And so, what that tells us is that in these higher energies, it's going to bring up what you are. So if you have unresolved issues, um, dense issues that you hadn't resolved, it's going to bring up more and more of what you are so that you can address it, work with it, and learn from it. So you can learn to um, manifest and work on your life much more appropriately. And if you already dealt with those issues and you already, creating in a much more responsible way, then it's going to bring up more what you are. So you're going to have more opportunities, more ways to do things, more things are going to be offered to you. It's going to be very easy and effortless. So like if you're, I don't know, I'm not sure if you're familiar with sailing, Andrew.
With what?
Sailing, like sailing a boat.
Oh, yeah, sailing above. Yeah, I thought that's
Yeah,
what you said.
okay.
But
So if you're into sailing a boat, everybody who's nautical recognizes this. Um, when the wind changes, the energy changes, okay? It's the same environment, but the energy has picked up, the wind has picked up. So what happened before 2012 is the Earth's um, energy was kind of picking up, but you're still in the boat traveling and maneuvering your boat in the third dimensional way. You're still doing it all by yourself. You're doing kind of the push and pull of how you navigate by yourself, and the wind picks up and you don't pay attention. All of a sudden, these big whooshes come through after 2012, like huge whooshes. It's topping you over, and you're still living your life the same 3D way that you always have, getting frustrated, not going anywhere, spinning around in circles at the harbor until you realize, oh, the energy has changed. The wind has picked up. The energy has changed. So what you got to do is recognize that this wind, this new energy, is a new tool that has changed the landscape. And so now you get some people to help you out. You work a little bit more cohesively with other people, and you're going to use the wind to get a couple knots up and go faster, farther into more pleasant horizons than if you're still kind of spinning your wheels the third dimension away in the harbor in this high wind. That's what's changed, is the energy has changed. And those who have recognized the tools have changed, and they have worked on their issues that have come up, and they're creating much more responsibly. Things are going to be much, much easier. 2012 was wonderful for a lot of people.
yeah, hi, sorry, I had a little trouble with my mute button there. Okay, yes, I do remember a few things from that year myself, and
Yeah, and 2020 is wonderful for a lot of people.
How can you say that? It seems like everybody is this year thinks it's the if you actually think 2020 was a good year, you must have been smoking so much pot all through the year to be able to last through it. Because I don't know of anybody, with a couple exceptions, who actually would actually see this year as being a decent year regarding what happened. So,
Well,
I mean,
you're gonna get what you are.
yes. Well, then again, a lot of people got a lot of free time to do spiritual work, being in a locked down
Yeah,
state. So that's one
yeah,
good thing.
yeah.
But
Yeah, a lot of people got a lot of different a lot of people got a lot of things come up to finally work on the issues. They have the time to work on the issues. I mean, I know there's a lot of people who want to forget 2020, but you're going to have different opinions. Some people who are a fifth dimensional awareness within their consciousness had an easy time manifesting things. It wasn't all that hard to get through it. For others, it was hell for them every day because they hated it because they got to work on their stuff. They got to work on your issues.
yes, and
Consider a cocoon year. You're cocooning.
yeah, that makes sense. A cocoon year, and this is going to be a change year. Um, Number five significance, numerologically speaking, has a lot to do with change, but there's other factors in regards to that. But moving on from this year, though, I do want to
But
talk about.
let me answer the question because there was a second part to the question about the dimensions because you talked about Jim Self said that we're in the fourth density or fourth dimension, whatever. So when I talk about Buddhism in terms of because I talk about it in terms of consciousness because everything out there is a reflection of your consciousness. When you change your perspective on things and you work on your issues and you learn to create more responsibly with a higher level of consciousness, then reality is going to change to the point that you will have your personal Mandela effects. You will see warps ins and outs. You will see red flashes in the air. You will see kind of thought things kind of be a little wavy. The dog next door, who was once black, is now white. And the owners always said that he's always been a white dog. Or your neighbor's car, which was always blue to you, all of a sudden one day is red. And that neighbor is like, no, I've always had this red car. So it's not faulty memory, it's that you change your perspective and you worked on yourself so much that you've shifted to a different parallel reality that is a higher frequency. Okay?
Yes.
That's the work that you do in your consciousness. So there's three consciousness. The third dimensional consciousness is construction of forms, basics. Fourth dimensional level of consciousness, I'm not talking, I know people are like fourth dimension, fifth dimension, the reality, I'm talking about level of consciousness because everything is a reflection of your consciousness. If you look at it the other way, then you're looking at your reality as the predictor of what you're going to experience. But no, it's you experiencing your reality. It's the other way around. It's all back to you. Fourth dimensional level of consciousness is that time exists in relation to each other. So, you know, you, as you age, you're going to grow and all that kind of stuff. The past creates the present creates the future, that linear thinking. And we're really good at doing that as people. We're going to still be fourth dimensional consciousness. We've internalized that. We've internalized the 3D way of seeing things. We also have internalized and kind of like compartmentalized the fourth dimensional awareness of how we see things. So it's still going to be that way. But for some people who are ready for the higher energies and are living in the higher energies with Earth, their fifth dimensional consciousness, which is a baseline of consciousness and of awareness of the reality of the matrix, in which you are living in the present moment. And if you're living in the present moment, all of time exists consciously and simultaneously, the past, the present, the future. So consciousness is expanding, the universe is constantly expanding. And if you're in the fifth dimensional awareness, you know that everyone is a fractal expression of source, and source is inside everyone. And so if you are fifth dimensional awareness, you're going to be dealing with an issue okay, that you're dealing with, and you'll resolve it, you'll forgive it, you'll let it go, whatever you do to kind of transmute that issue that's holding down your frequency. And all of a sudden, by doing that, your your version of yourself in the past that had experienced that specific case that caused you in this present moment to deal with whatever you're dealing with and resolving it and healing it, now your past has changed. And you don't know that your past has changed until all of a sudden you come across a family member or a girlfriend or a friend that is talking about that specific incident, and they have a completely different history of how it happened, because you completely change your past because of the fifth dimensional work that you're doing on yourself. This is where energy healing comes from. You're connected to the crystalline consciousness of Source, Christ consciousness of Source. It's on the covers of all the Buddhist mandalas, and everybody can do it. But if you want to stay 3D in the higher energies, you're welcome to do that. You're just going to get more of your life lessons till you hand it to you much faster and more resilience and much more creatively until you learn your lesson.
Yes, and I do hope more and more people learn their lesson at a faster rate. More and more, like say, people are waking up exponentially, but I seriously doubt that it's truly exponentially. That's probably an exaggeration. If it was truly exponentially, 99.9% of the world would probably be awake. Since I've heard that said, well, I've heard that many times. Once heard that in 2015.
I
So
think one of the reasons why, for some people, I mean, you're gonna have that dual nature. You need up, you need down. Okay, you can't be up if there's no down. Okay, that's the way nature of reality is created. Is that duality of creation? There has to be a right, then there has to be a left. There has to be up and a down. Without the opposite to mirror, you wouldn't go anywhere. You wouldn't be anything. You don't know who you are until I can talk to you and look at you in the face, until you see your reflection. All right, that's just the way the nature of reality is. So the more you are angry about reality and everything else, that's what you're going to keep getting back to you. Do a past life hypnosis and get over your 3D issue with reality.
yes,
That's what Buddha did with the Jakarta tales. He got over his stuff fast. He was very pessimistic about reality.
yes, he was. Saw a movie about him once in college in some class on India. Um, but you mentioned Christ consciousness. Seems a little bit paradoxical that something named after Christ, if that is the Christ we're actually talking about, he's not the only Christ, Jesus. What could Christ have to do with the Buddhist? What you say? It's not a religion, so I almost used that word again. But Christ in Buddhism seems like a little bit of a paradox. Well, then again, the Islamic people recognize Jesus Christ not as like a Messiah, but as a prophet. So I can imagine it's not out of the question that he something named after Christ, if he's the Christ that named
Okay,
after would.
so
Yeah.
I covered this. I covered this in book 2 of Buddhist Mandalas. I covered the luminaries, and I have an extensive amount of information that we already know in Buddhism, but we don't talk to people in the West because you have a knip shit over this stuff. But and you're gonna have a knip shit over this stuff too when you find out the full story of Yeshua ben Yosef. But basically, Yeshua is the word Christ is crystalline consciousness. Okay, it's a breakdown of the word kristalla, which is these 7 sacred geometry tones: ka, ra, sa, la. And these are the tones in your Merkabah. Mer means light, ka means spirit, and ba means body. It is your soul, which is your spirit, in your body. It is your Merkabah. It's your aura field, your yin yang, your Sri Yantra, your Buddhist mandalas. I cover this extensively in book 1 just to catch people up. But when you see that you are energy, and as energy, you are creating your reality individually and collectively, Then you get to book 2 of Buddhist Mandalas, Christ consciousness of a multidimensional Merkabah, and you see you're connected to Christ. You're connected to the crystalline nature of source code itself. The universe is inside you. And when you connect to the universe inside you, you become fifth dimensional awareness. That's crystalline consciousness or Christ consciousness. It is a word for the consciousness of being fifth dimensional and above. It is not a last name for Yeshua. And since you brought up Yeshua, just for those people who are unaware of his background. So Yeshua, we had 3 Buddhist monks who, through Vedic astrology and meditation, went to Yeshua's parents, Mary and Joseph, to locate Yeshua because he was a starseed. And in meditation, they said that, oh, we have to go find this kid. He has a mission to do, come bring up humanity, and has some things he has to do. So they went over to find them, and his parents were part of the Gnostics community at the time, a mystic community. And they went to find him, and they said, when he's old enough, bring him to our monasteries. We will teach him everything that we know about metaphysics and consciousness and energy healing so that he's prepared to graduate well in the Egyptian mystery schools and do some of the things that he has to do to fulfill these specific things that Source says that he needs to do to fulfill prophecy so that he can help raise the consciousness of humanity. And so that's his backstory. And he met Miriam, his wife, and Miriam is from Magdala, Israel. And we also have her in our canon as well, as studying with him, along with his cousin, John the Baptist, as well. We don't tell people this because you guys will have a conniption.
Yeah, well, United States is already in a conniption with left versus right, and everything about the recent thing that happened in November that was a total farce that you really can't talk about much on YouTube because you'll get shadow banned. But anyhow, moving on to some other things here.
So
You want to say
yeah,
something
so
about that?
that's
Because before you do, I just want to point out that, it seems so. There are some people who seem to have gotten a little bit of a state of depression ever since that turned out the way it did, because they can't imagine how someone who's as demented as he is and um, could actually be in office right now. It seems if we're truly rising to a higher level consciousness Earth, then there's no way that Mr. T could have lost to demented Joe, even no matter how much voter fraud. You would think that Creator Gods wouldn't allow for the voter fraud to have gotten away with what it did, but apparently it. I just said voter fraud. That's probably going to cost us. But anyhow, you get what I'm trying to say. How in the world did that play out the way it did? If we're supposed to rise through consciousness, some say it's all a farce anyway, and this is the way the good guys want it to play out to maintain the illusion that the bad system of control is being taken out of power. But what do you have to say about this?
Well, actually, I wrote this in Buddhist Mandalas a long time ago, but
Okay.
it's been published in Buddhist Mandalas 1. That in the research about the Schumann resonance and whenever the Earth spikes, for some reason, she does not spike around some of the things that Trump, when he was in office or when he became in office, it didn't do anything. But when people went against it, like the Women's March, it went crazy. It liked the Women's March. It liked people going against the Muslim ban. Why? I don't know. Like I said, for some reason, the Earth will respond to some human events and not to others. It did respond and spike during the previous administration before Obama, when he was inaugurated, and it responded to some of the things that he did, had no emotion or energy spikes during Trump. That's scientific. You can go to newsphere.princeton.edu, read the research for yourself, make your own decision. But with regards to politics and religions are going to be the last to get there anyways.
Yes. So let's not try to politicize this.
Yeah,
Talk too much. I want to try to stick
exactly.
with Buddhism
It's going to
stuff
be the
here.
last one to get to fifth dimensional because they're still stuck in the 3D wars and separation. And you have to have compassion for the people that you don't like because they're part of you and you're part of them and you're all connected to source. You don't know the bigger pictures. Do some hypnosis, meditation, whatever. You'll get there. Everybody will get there. They all have their own journey. Some a little longer than others.
Right. Some people, they can't be woken up because their beliefs are too strong. But I suppose if something comes out right in their face, then well, maybe they'll be willing to change a little bit. But
They'll
they might.
change when they want to. They'll change
Right.
when they want to. I'm going to thrive in my life regardless of what's going on. And you can too. There are people that thrive when everybody else is, struggling because they pick up and create with what they have. It goes
Okay.
back to you.
Right.
It goes back to you.
Right. So, moving down to question number 8 here, I noticed something here. What offerings do you provide people going through a spiritual crisis and activated sixth senses? Well, the thing that stood out there was activated sixth senses, and you didn't say sixth sense, you said sixth senses to make it clear that there's more than one sixth sense.
Yep.
An Egyptian scribe elder guy named Hakim Iwan or something like that, who appeared in the Pyramid Code documented by Carmen Bolter, said we have 360 senses. Kind of makes you think maybe we're actually supposed to have 360 days and not 365, but the Gregorian calendar is meant to screw with our senses, among other things. So they added 4 1/4 days, getting all leap year strict. But the idea that there's so many more than a sixth additional sense, there's 360, and how that ties into the number of degrees in a circle, which probably should, like I said, should be the number of days in a year we have if we were metaphysically accurate and serious. Um, what are these six senses you are talking about?
Well, people are familiar with the common six senses like channeling and kind of being intuitive, telekinesis, all that kind of stuff. Those are the common six senses. I actually have clients who they will read Buddhist Mandalas and they'll read my other Buddhism book and they'll go through this journey and they didn't expect to, but then all of a sudden they had their awakening. They started having some symptoms of reality changing on them and going to the doctors, trying to figure out what's going on, nothing wrong with them. They continue this path with meditation and other things. And all of a sudden, as they're doing their spiritual work and working on themselves and their energy raises, they start coming in and activating or amplifying their existing six senses. So if they were empathic, now all of a sudden they feel everybody's energy, everybody's life lessons, and it's overwhelming them because they don't know how to live with this new spiritual growth spurt. I see clients that come to me through my website, Merkabah Chakras, who are going, I'm able to channel all of a sudden and I don't know how to stop it. I'm channeling in the middle of board meetings with team managers, and it's embarrassing. So they need to learn spiritual sixth sense etiquette. I have people who come to me and they're like, I'm all of a sudden in my room and I can see my spouse walking across the bathroom, but my spouse is sitting right here. It's like I'm having a glimpse of a parallel version of my spouse and myself doing something else, but we're right here. And then all of a sudden, my parallel self is looking at me going, "Ooh, you see me?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I see you." And I have clients who fly across the country during a pandemic just to make sense of these six senses that are coming up, and it's overwhelming them. And there's nowhere they can go when they go, I started doing my awakening and ascension work, and being less pessimistic about society and everything is kind of letting it go, working on myself, and all of a sudden my spouse has different eye colors, Vaughn. My spouse has different eye colors and a different backstory for how we met. So I tell them, well, guess what? You got an opportunity to fall in love all over again with your spouse. So go on some dates and get to know your spouse, this version in this reality, and learn to fall in love with the new eye color. It's the same person. The energy is still there. It's just a different version in a higher reality. These are the cases that I get from clients worldwide. They're happening. These are fifth dimensional people.
Yes, and regarding fifth dimensional people or higher dimensional people, looking at one of the videos here, UFO abductions and star seals build 5D Earth with Preston Dennett. That was 3 months ago. You did that, and I don't think you included any of the in any of the list of questions. You gave me anything on UFO abductions and star seeds with anything about those terms. Very
Actually, we cover it very much. We cover it very much. There's only so much. There's only 5,000 characters you can put in the YouTube description. I fill it out pretty well. But if you watch the whole video, we actually cover a lot of spirituality. He actually he's written over 30 UFO abduction books, and he said of all the people he's been interviewed on for all 30 of his book, no one ever wants to talk about the spiritual nature of UFOs, except for me. And he's like, the reason why this UFOs want people to be spiritual and get to fifth dimensional awareness, which you can look it up according to science. They found this out recently. We can access within our consciousness, in our minds, up to 11 dimensions of reality. I'm just talking about the fifth, just to get to baseline. So anyways, but Preston, wonderful guy, he said that most people are not at the level of energy to be able to perceive and communicate with aliens because they'll short their energy field. They'll short their Merkabahs. They need to raise their frequency, they raise their awareness, so that they can handle their presence and so that they can see each other and communicate. And I actually had a recent podcast interview on my YouTube channel with a Starseed training ambassador founder, Jonathan Trinity Martin. He says the same thing. You're not going to make contact with the 5D aliens or beings of higher dimensions if you're a low frequency. They will short you. It's all about your Merkabahs. Read Buddhist Mandalas, you'll understand. And for the audience members, if they read that and they start having their awakening and ascension symptoms, and reality is starting to look really fantastic and surreal, and not like they remember, there is plenty of people who offer spiritual crisis centers and also talk to clients as well to kind of help you adjust. And they will subside. It will subside and it will become your new reality.
Thank you for getting into that. I see you also have video here on Ho'oponopono. Hope I pronounced that correctly.
Yep.
Is
Hold
that
on, hold
a
on.
is that like your number one meditation of choice, or is there something special about that? And why don't you explain what it is for those that haven't heard of it? Most of my audience
Okay,
probably has, but go ahead.
it's a Hawaiian. It's a Hawaiian method of making right more right. So it's a Hawaiian way of creating within your consciousness. So there is no mistakes. Consciousness does not make any mistakes. Even your horrible moments and your horrible life experiences was not a mistake. It was something that you have in your chart prior to this lifetime for your journey. It's a jumping point for you to overcome and to use that to make better what was supposed to happen. So that's why they call it Ho'oponopono Apono Keala, which means in Hawaiian, make right more right. It was not a mistake when it happened. Now you have to make that more right. So in my podcast, my YouTube channel podcast, and the podcast actually distributes out to over 45 different podcast apps and all the major ones. And then of course on YouTube, the video is there as well. But I've interviewed about 30 so far, and we'll never get a chance out interview more. But I like to I add in some understanding of Buddhism in different topics so that people can understand that. Oh, because how does that relate to Buddhism? Where do we have that in our canon and so forth? So I bring in many different people from many different traditions just to show people that there is so many different ways in which you can connect to Christ consciousness. You can connect to source code. Lots of different ways which everybody can learn energy healing There's different methods, not one's for everybody. So pick the one that you like the best. And I continue to provide that. So they're fun podcast interview. I love them. I love doing them. I do in my free time. My husband watches the kids so that I can kind of geek out in my metaphysical stuff with the different guests that I have on. And I just enjoy showing the work that everybody else is doing that's wonderful that maybe people don't know about. There's more ways to connect to source and consciousness and live this reality the best that you can. That's what I provide with the Merkabah Chakras podcast on my YouTube channel.
I'm sure I'll listen to a few of those in the near future. I noticed on one of the interviews that you've done here 3 months ago, Trip to Infinite Consciousness, the design on the front of that, the logo there is the Mandelbrot set, which is something that I've frequently said is the best, maybe the best thing out there for describing the infinite consciousness nature of reality. And the intriguing thing about that, the Mandelbrot set, is no matter how small you get into it, you cannot affect one piece of Mandelbrot set, no matter how small it is, without affecting the whole entire set. If this is how reality works, then this would suggest that blinking your eyes has the ability to change the winds on the planet Neptune or any other world in the cosmos, but it is so obviously so infinitesimally small and insignificant that it might as well be non-existent. But the fact that it has the ability to affect everything is kind of well, every small thing that anything does affects everything else out there because everything is infinite. The implications behind that, well, what implications can we draw out of that? Could you maybe help touch on
Well,
that a bit?
yeah. Well, that interview was with Martin Ball, and he wrote a series of metaphysical books from his ayahuasca and 5-MeO DMT experiences, which is his method of meditation to get him right into gamma brainwaves, which is those high gamma brainwave frequencies that meditators have, which they found in science to change physical reality. The people around them, when they do the science experiments, actually are much more peaceful and there's less violence. And they've proven this, that um, it takes 1% of any given population in any area to affect 99% of the people around them, just because they're doing it in the level of consciousness by getting into those high brainwave frequencies and connecting to Christ consciousness or source consciousness in you during meditation or during your conscious practices. So Martin Ball, we put that image of the Mandelbrot set because he had those experiences and found, and I put this in Buddhist Mandalas too, a section on the Mandelbrot set. But basically, consciousness, source, God, Allah, the Lord, whatever you want to call it, I am, which is a Greek word for Lord, 2nd century. But basically, consciousness is always expanding, and it's always just like the Mandelbrot said. We are kind of like those kind of Russian dolls that you kind of put into each other. They're the same. They just keep going, and they're the same exact one, just from one to another. It's the same thing with us too. We are a smaller version of consciousness, and consciousness is a smaller version of a big consciousness, and that's all we are. We're just Mandelbrot sets of each other. I want to caveat too that the more you hate somebody else because they don't follow your agenda, you will feel that in your life review of what you do to them as yourself.
Yes, the life review. You see, since you mentioned that, I guess you might as well touch on that. After you pass away, you will have a life review. Um, and well,
You can have a life review in hypnosis and meditation
yes,
right now.
and I mean, I heard from some during a psychic session that I had with a psychic who channeled this girl that I knew who overdosed on heroin. She said, speaking from the other side, that heaven, everybody goes there. It's really pleasant, except that if you've lived a life of traumatic experiences and don't have much to look back on, then heaven isn't so pleasant. Her life review must have been extremely, extremely hard to look at. Um, but I mean, if you're the kind of person that maybe you did do a few sins here and there in your earlier part of your life, but you've totally changed around to make yourself almost practically perfect in every way, um, then one would think that when you have the life review, you're probably going to think when you see all the bad stuff before, you're going to say, "Why are you bothering to showing me this? It's all significant because I realized I didn't have to worry about this anymore when I changed my life around." Well, apparently that's not how it
No,
works. So,
no, no, no. So you can actually, like I said earlier, Buddha had his 1,000 life reviews as himself and as everybody else that he engaged with, as the good guy, as the bad guy, etc. As he was experiencing how he treats them directly as themselves, as himself. So you can do it in meditation. You can do it in hypnosis. There's a lot of ways in which you can connect to source, and you can kind of go into, um, different experiences that you want to know a little bit more about. But basically, there is no judgment. It's just life lessons. Okay, judgment comes from a lot of Western traditions, but there is no judgment in a life review. It's just um, these were what you had created in your pre-life planning. There's some free will in some of it, um, but some major events you wanted to have happen, like if you wanted to have children in this life, you are going to meet that person and have children with that person. If you know you wanted to get married, and that was some of the things that your soul had pre-planned prior to your incarnation, um, that is going to happen. So there's some fixed things that are going to happen to you, and there's also some fixed life challenges or life lessons that you will have so that you can um, learn and grow and use that as a jumping post to your next best thing. So I have a lot of clients who are addicts and they've done horrible, horrible things in some people's eyes being an addict, but they overcame it. And from overcoming it, they know what it feels like to get into that situation in the first place and then know the struggle to get clean and to live much more peacefully. So now they can help other people. Okay. It's not a punishment and it's not, there's no judgment in it. That's what we call them life lessons.
yeah, I'm sure there wasn't judgment when you're talking about entities from higher levels of consciousness. They're not going to be judging. Um, but since we're on the subject of higher levels of consciousness, you seem to be all about using Buddhism to get into a fifth dimensional state of mind. Well, when it comes to Earth, if what you believe, you mentioned something about 11 dimensions. String theory also seems to believe in 11 dimensions, and I've heard some entities of higher consciousness say that string theory, as mainstream science says it, is generally, for the most part, accurate in regards to understanding how reality works at the smallest level, vibrating strings and whatnot in multiple dimensions. But in regards to the number of dimensions, there seems to be a couple different camps. It seems like in the spirituality world, there's a lot of 12-dimensional camp people, and 22 is also,
There's a
yeah.
lot higher dimensions as well, but that's just what we know in science so far. There's much, much more.
Well, yeah,
There's a
but
lot more.
and I wanted to say Andrew Bartz is that Akashic Records reader. He did say in some masterpiece talks with Lance White that I recommend everybody watch on YouTube, Big Part series that he did of Mount Shasta. He mentioned that Earth, Mother Earth, was originally created as a seven-dimensional seed planet. Well, seventh dimension, what's the significance of that? From what I've heard, once you get up to the seventh dimension, there is no more service to self. It's strictly service to others. Fifth and sixth dimension are wonderful and all, but even the entities there exhibit some degree of service to self behavior. But once you get to the seventh, it's strictly service to others, which would suggest that Earth is meant to be a place where entities learn how to become seven dimensional service to others entities, which also raises the question, okay, that means on Earth you can't get higher than the seventh dimension. And what is a
That's not
dimension?
true.
Okay.
That's not true. So when I do hypnosis with my clients and stuff, sometimes they'll go into much, much higher dimensions. But I don't really get too bogged down with labels and boxes.
Um,
What's the point?
uh,
That's very left brain ego kind of like separatism, like, oh, we're gonna put this box here, we're gonna label here, we're gonna separate here, now we're gonna jump through this hoop and that hoop. What That's all left brain ego talk. Just
mm,
Do your work, raise your frequency, and the experiences will come.
Hmm.
Okay?
Yes,
You will have your personal Mandela effects. Reality is going to be much, much more fluid than you had ever experienced it to be.
I agree that it will be. And
Oh, it
so,
is.
right, and you say there's a lot of left brain stuff involved with this. I mean, don't even get me started on a can of worms. What's the difference between a dimension and a density? You got people to say that they're two different words for the same thing. You got some people say the difference is blah blah blah. Some say the difference is yada yada yada. So,
Yeah.
well,
I don't really care so much about the densities. I just
oh,
care
so you
about the
say there is a
consciousness.
difference. So there's a
I
difference.
just I just focus on the awareness levels within your consciousness because all the external is going to change based on your level of consciousness and your energy field.
Exactly. And you mentioned
So
hypnosis and the work you do with that. Question number 9 here, last one on the list. Is there a last message that the universe wants everyone to know that you kept getting from your hypnosis client? Well, that's a general message. I might as well ask you to answer that, but I also want to, before we end this show, give you a chance to make a sales pitch out of your hypnosis work and explain how it works, and maybe even someone like I who has experience to believe I can't get hypnotized easily, and I have experienced that myself. Maybe you can give some advice if I ever want to do this. So, but to answer the question specifically, last message: universe wants us to know that you kept getting from your clients.
yeah. One, if you there's a lot of different ways to connect to source. Some people do hypnosis, some people do meditation, some do it through Kundalini yoga. There's a lot of different ways. So find the one that works for you. And I also want to say there's a lot of free content on the Merkabah Chakras website and also on the Merkabah Chakras YouTube channel and podcast. Lots of free stuff. Just listening to all that free stuff alone will help you on your journey. But if you want to geek out and go even further, you can read the books, which you can get off of Amazon, and you can find those links through the website as well. And if you are going through your spiritual crisis or want to talk about your amplifying six senses, and how to adjust to them before the next one comes on, you can also reach out to me and schedule a consultation with me. Um, or if you want to do the hypnosis, I do in person and I do remote, and they work exactly the same. I get the same source. I talk to the same source. We do the same energy healing. If that's in your in what you were looking for, it's the same exact. So the script is a little bit different, but you get the same exact results. And I've done it with clients as far away as China and Hong Kong and different places as well. But the same message I get from source, no matter who the client is, the same voice that comes through. And so I put into these words, and this is what source wants everybody to know. You've always been enough. Use the gifts and resources all around you to create a life you want to experience. A life full of joy and love. The spirit world will nudge you through synchronicity. You can do it. That's what Source wants you to know. And so happy sojourns, everyone.
Thank you very much for that. We still have a few minutes left. It's not quite
Oh, okay.
7:30, so yeah, making a sales pitch out of your hypnosis session before I give you the chance to do that and what you do and how it works and all that. You We're talking about suggesting maybe I should get one with you, and I said I don't know. I mean, I remember from my senior year of high school post prom party, we had a hypnotist come to the party, and I approached it with a mentality of I want to get hypnotized. I want to see if this works out. But in the end, I still ended up being the first person in my entire high school class who the hypnotist had to kick off the stage because he realized he couldn't
That's not real
hypnotize me.
hypnosis.
Okay.
That's just fake hypnosis. Real hypnosis is 4 hours or longer.
Okay. Well, you say that's fake. The people that didn't appear to be, it appeared that
Yeah,
they were
they're
hypnotized.
entertaining. Some of them will easily go into it,
Okay.
but for others, they need a little bit more.
All right. So
So
these 4 hour sessions though, who thought of something 4 hours long like that where I have to sit still. I mean, I'm an
they go by
Aries
really
and a
fast. They go by really
yeah.
fast. A lot of people don't know that they are that because there's like there's a good amount of time to go over your client intake form to kind of see what your issues are. I really go into your mommy daddy issues, see why you think the way you think, why you project the way you project, why reality is created the way it's being created. So we get deep into the conditioning that you have allowed yourself to ingest. Understand that so we know how to ask those questions when we talk to source at that part of the hypnosis. So a good chunk of it goes over, your relationships, goes over your childhood, goes over your pains in your body and things that you want to create in your life, what your purpose is, etc. So get all your questions answered. Nobody leaves with any unanswered questions with source. If you want to bring in your deceased loved ones, you want to channel that person in through the session and have conversation, ask those questions, we will ask that. If you want to bring in anybody within consciousness, families, spirit guides, whatever, we'll ask or bring those people in, we'll ask those questions. And I have a huge playlist of over 20 hypnosis clients who have allowed me to use their sessions. I make little movies out of it. You can see it on the YouTube channel under the Reincarnation Hypnosis playlist. Please forgive me if it's not like studio perfect because they're real sessions. But the basic information is there. I've spoken to alien collectives that are following their incarnate who decided to incarnate at this time for different reasons. So I talk to source each and every single time. So and when you're in hypnosis, oftentimes, even when you listen to the recordings, they will be down for like 2 hours, and they're like, that felt like 30 minutes, because when you're in those higher dimensions of awareness within your consciousness under hypnosis, time flies by faster. But in the real world, it's going by slower. So when you come back into the normal state of existence, when you come out of the hypnotic meditation, uh, all of a sudden 2, 3 hours went by and it felt like 30 minutes. So that's how time works in these higher dimensions of awareness.
Yes, time is an illusion, no question about that. So, all right, it's 7:30, and you suggested, because you know all about the lousy attention span factor too, as well as I do, that people tend to zonk out after 90 minutes. So, I guess we'll end it here. This was very, very fascinating. I'm very glad to have gotten you on as a guest, able to touch on many things. Thank you, and it's a rare gem for to have a guest who's willing to pre-write the bio for me, and so I could just copy and paste it from your email and provide a list of questions too. That was very, very nice and generous of you. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me. And everybody, thank you for listening to Andrew's podcast. It's very enlightening.
Thank you very much. So take care. I don't know if the Buddhists would use the word namaste, but I'm going to say it anyway.
Sure.
Namaste. Enjoy the rest of your check time for the consciousness. Happy 222, and happy rest of 21, no matter what's going to be in store for us. Take care.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye bye.